Man, this was a wild day of college football. Welcome to the Hook'em Horns show, or Hook'em Horns post-game show. My name is Andrew Miller, editor over at hookemheadlines.com. As usual for the post-game show, just me coming at you here. We're filming now just after LSU was able to pull out a really crazy two-point conversion to beat Alabama, and obviously the big thing here, Texas finally, the word of the night is finally getting a road win. Not just a road win, but a road win over a ranked opponent under Steve Sarkisian. Also able to finally land on a fumble. The play that seals the game for Texas is I think he was maybe 7-8 yards down the field. Jalen Ford lands on a fumble that's forced by Keandre Coburn, knocks the ball out of Adrian Martinez's hands while Kansas State was driving the ball. They had it just, I believe at that point, just past midfield. Less than 2 minutes to go. At that point in the game, I mean, I don't know what Texas fan isn't saying, like, here we go again. Texas had a 31-10 lead at halftime. Kansas State ends up essentially winning the second half 17-3. And, I mean, I, among many other Texas fans, am just thinking, why can this team... Like, this one, Texas had a lot of opportunities to seal the win. We'll get into that in a little bit, but like, holy crap! This was a nuts game, nuts way to end. But I am happy to say that Texas is not only bowl eligible, finally gets a road win this season over a Big 12 foe, finally gets a road win over a ranked foe, finally hangs on to a double-digit lead in the second half over a team on the road, or just any team for that matter. I mean, they held on against Iowa State, and so kind of a repeat of that storyline here. Yeah, Texas able to get it done, 34-27 win in Manhattan over a number 13 ranked Kansas State team. Texas comes in the initial college football playoff rankings ranked number 24. And so, I mean, this win obviously does big things for Texas because next weekend you have an undefeated and, God knows, given LSU beating Alabama, Clemson going down potentially a top 5 ranked TCU team after they beat Texas Tech today. That is going to be a massive game at DKR in Austin next weekend. And we will talk plenty about that in this, or I guess next week's show. But for the time being, let's kind of recap this game. What went right, what went wrong for Texas, and where we go from here. So, what went wrong? Or, let's do what went right first. Let's keep it positive from the start. So, what went right for Texas? First things first, Bijan Robinson. Massive game. Huge first half. Over 10 yards to carry in the first half. Had a long run of 68 yards out to the left. I followed Hayden Connor. Down block. It's a pitch play. Anyway, he almost made it into the end zone on that. Gets chased down about a little beyond the 10-yard line for Kansas State. That goes along with a 36-yard touchdown scamper that he had again in the first half. I mean, the first half was the Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson show. I mean, if you remove that fumble from Roschon, and God knows that fumble was really impactful when it came down to it, but I mean, both those guys were great again. That 1-2 punch at running back. I've done articles about it at Hook'em Headlines, but I think that those two are the best running back duo in the country, I think. And just one of the most versatile, without a doubt. Bijan Robinson finishes this game. I'll pull it up here, but 216 rushing yards, about 7 yards per carry. I don't remember exactly how many carries on that. Backward math isn't clicking for me at the moment, but 2 catches, 34 yards, 1 rushing score, no touchdown receptions, but 30 yards, 30 carries. 209 yards? Um, anyway, either way, a massive, massive game for Bijan. He had 161 rushing yards in the first half alone, which was a career high for him. As we've seen at multiple points this season, he has largely put the team on his back and carried them throughout. And he picked up a few key first downs in this game. There was a drive, I believe that was in the fourth quarter, where Texas needed points. They got help from a late hit out of bounds when it was around the 50-yard line. But Texas ends up coming away with 3 points on about a 28-30-yard for Auburn field goal. And yes, Kansas State ultimately ends up losing by 7. But I think that drive was, while Texas was still not good in the second half on offense, not great on defense either, missed some opportunities to really start putting that game away with some missed fumbles, and we'll talk about that later. But that drive was huge, and Bijan was a big part of that. Quinn was pretty good. Like, he responded really well. Did he play a huge role in this game? No, not really. But you didn't really get any big mistakes from Quinn, especially down the stretch. And I mean, statistically, he's not blowing anyone away in this game, but he made some good throws, made some good reads in the first half. He ends up coming away with, I believe, just shy of 200 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 18 of 30, and then I think he ended up breaking even for rushing yards. But he was good in this game, and one of my favorite plays from him, unfortunately, ended up being one of the worst plays in the game for Texas, where he ends up rolling out, escaping pressure, finds Xavier Worthy about 10 yards down the field. I believe it was on second or third down, and Worthy ends up fumbling the ball. That was the first score of the second half for Kansas State, and it was just really, really unfortunate after Worthy and Ewers, especially in the red zone, had a good connection in the first half. We saw a lot of nice routes run by Worthy. And even so, I mean, I think that there were definitely some additional opportunities for him. He only finishes with 42 yards, but he gets 2 touchdown catches. He was good in the first half. You remove that fumble, he was still pretty good in the second half. But that fumble is just going to be the thing that defines the second half for him in this game, unfortunately. Roschon Johnson, I want to mention, finishes this game 7 rushes, 62 yards, and 1 rushing score. Not really any other running backs that played a role. Keelan Robinson, 2 catches for 20 yards. There was some involvement with him, getting him motioned out of the backfield, which I've been screaming to the high heavens throughout on the site this year for him to get more touches. There's just so many ways you can utilize him, but at least they got him involved a little bit in the passing game. But so that was pretty much the extent of the offense. Defensively, you have to start and end with Jalen Ford in this game. Comes up with 10 tackles, leads the team. Maybe a few run stuffs, I believe 1 quarterback pressure, but I'm going to have to go back and kind of rewatch the film and recap the stats to get some of those more specific details. But the main 2 plays for him, obviously the fumble recovery at the end, that was the biggest play of the game, but I believe right before the end of late in the first half, he ends up coming away with an interception of Adrian Martinez, his second pick of the season, and set Texas up for a score, and that was a huge play. Huge play. He has flipped momentum single-handedly with 2 interceptions this season, because the first one was against Iowa State, and that was a huge one too. So he's been massive. He's been really good. He was good in run defense in this game. He really wasn't doing a whole lot to miss us. I mean, he wasn't missing assignments. He was very sound in the gaps. He was doing everything you would ask for out of a middle line. I have nothing but positive things to say about Jalen Ford coming out of this game. So a lot of different things I could say, but yes. DeAndre Coburn, I mean, he's the one that ends up forcing the fumble late in the game. You have to mention next the interior defensive line. Been beating this drum all season that they've been incredible. They were a huge difference maker in this game. And we'll get into what went wrong in a second, but it was almost where Tavondre Sweat recovering a fumble was the Jalen Ford version of capping this game. Sweat, Murphy, Ojimo, Coburn, all of them were really good again. They were forcing a lot of pressure up the middle on Adrian Martinez, really collapsing the pocket from the middle. And you've been seeing that a lot this season. And, man, yeah, they were good. They were really good. Limited Deuce Vaughn in this game. Deuce Vaughn got involved in the passing game, but I mean, on the ground, 19 carries for 73 yards. If you told Texas fans before the game that that's the stat line that Deuce Vaughn is finishing with on the ground, I think most of them are going to take that. Yes, he was involved in the passing game, was huge in that. 7 catches for 86 yards and a touchdown. But we're talking about the positive right now, so we'll get into the negative here in a moment. All around, I thought the secondary played pretty well. There were some missed tackles out there, missed assignments. Some of the younger guys weren't quite keeping up, but Watts had a pretty good game. Jameson, you would like to see him fall or get that fumble when Malik Knowles. Deshaun Jameson's had rough points in the last 2 weeks, I will say that. Or in the last 2 games, I will say that. But in terms of down by down, their pass coverage, they were pretty good. Not much to fault there. So, special teams was also good. I wanted to give a shout there because special teams has been really good. Not this season as a whole, but they've been sound. Daniel Trejo, that late punt, I got to give a shout there because that was a nice punt. Pinned him inside the 20, flip field position. So that was huge. Now, let's get into what went wrong and then look forward from here. I'm not going to spend too much time harping on this because I'm sure we will in next week's show, but what went wrong, I think the first thing you have to mention here is when you look at the stat line, and it tells a lot about how this game went, especially in the second half. Adrian Martinez comes up with a season high. I hope not a career high. I can look that up later, but he comes up with 329 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. 2 passing touchdowns, for God's sake, was his season high. It's just not what you want. 1 interception, which we mentioned earlier from Jalen Ford. But he didn't do much on the ground by his usual consideration. I don't know if he was limited because he was coming off injury in this game, but he ends up with 52 rushing yards on 14 carries, 1 rushing score. So he was averaging earlier this season about 80 rushing yards a game. So a lot of his production was coming on the ground. And Texas did a pretty good job limiting him in that regard. I think PK had a pretty good game plan coming into this one. Texas was able to do a pretty good job keeping him in the pocket. There were a few missed tackles here and there, but as a whole, Texas played pretty well against the quarterback run game, which has been something that has bested them for a lot of the season. So, good job in that regard. But again, we're talking about what went wrong here. 329 passing yards. Texas was having a difficult time covering a lot of stuff between the numbers. The middle of the field was an issue for Texas in this game. Malik Knowles finishes 3 catches, 93 yards. There was a good portion of the game where it just felt like Texas couldn't cover Malik Knowles or Deuce Vaughn in the middle. They go for, I believe, over 170 yards, and a lot of those receiving yards came between the numbers. Some of it, Texas played a lot of zone coverage in this game, and for some of the younger guys, Jameer Johnson, I don't think Michael Taft had at least in the second half, was not very good. And it cost Texas on a lot of those drives. Kansas State's receivers were making plays for sure, kind of like you wouldn't expect them to. But Cade Warner, Malik Knowles, Phillip Brooks, they are experienced, capable, proven wide receivers, but Texas has the personnel to deal with that, and you just hope for better. A lot of those routes were nothing complicated. A lot of seam routes, some slants across the middle. That Texas DBs were just getting lost in zone coverage. Occasionally the linebackers, but mostly the DBs. On offense, yes, the play calling went dry in the second half. I get it. You want to ride Bijan and Roschon to a win. Against a defensive front as experienced as Kansas State's, you saw them starting to figure it out. I mean, you're just going to, they did what a lot of teams did last season. You load the box to make you beat them through the air. And Quinn Ewers wasn't bad in this game. I don't know what they Jordan Whittington was good when given the opportunity. Same with JT Sanders. Same with Worthy. I don't know what the hesitancy was to throw the passing game out the window in the second half. I mean, again, yes, I get it. Bijan's doing really, really good things. I don't know if Steve Sarkisian lost a little bit of trust after the Worthy fumble, but sweet God, stay with the passing game. If it's working in certain situations, if there's 9, there were 2 plays where Texas had a negative or 0 rushing yard play. That there were 8 or 9 guys in the box, and Texas still tries to run his own play. I just don't get it. I don't get it on that front. You'd like to see, especially with some of the first half play calling there, that Steve Sarkisian has enough plays in his bag to be able to pull something out to get these big pickups on third down in the second half. So I don't know. That was definitely one of the biggest gripes. But interior offensive line, I will say the run blocking in the second half wasn't as good. I don't know how much you can pin on them, though, because Kansas State, like I said, was really, really loading the box. So anyway, I think those are most of the positives and negatives. I'm sure that there's something here or there that I missed, but we will cover plenty on the site and everything like that in the next few days. What's next? I mean, obviously the TCU game coming up is now huge. It is a game under the lights of DKR. Texas has played well at home. I will be interested to see what the opening line is for that game. I don't know if let me see if it's already out here, but I don't think it is. If it's not, which I would assume it's not. Yeah. Oh, wow, yeah. It is already out. Texas opens as a 7-point favorite over TCU. Interesting. There's a lot we could talk about there, but we'll get into that, and we'll get into that later. Anyway, that's a massive game with massive implications for the college football playoff and mainly the Big 12 title. And that's the main thing I want to talk about here is like Oklahoma State losing today and looking as bad as they had the last 2 weeks. Baylor winning, beating OU on the road today. And yeah, I mean, TCU stays undefeated. So right now, TCU is pretty locked in for the Big 12 championship game. Kansas State losing. You now got this this group of 2-loss teams in the Big 12 where, like, Texas is squarely back in the mix to get into the Big 12 championship game. This TCU game is obviously huge. That road game on November 19th against Kansas is also massive. So you got to hope that this is not the last road win on the season for Texas. If they can get a win against Kansas, you have, because Kansas and Oklahoma State are technically still alive in the Big 12. These next 3 games are huge because then you have Black Friday against Baylor. Long story short, the schedule stacks up to be really, really exciting, and it's nice to know that Texas controls its own destiny. That's not something we have said a whole lot heading into October recently. November. It's the COVID year, kind of, but it is nice. Texas gets bowl eligible. There's a whole lot to be happy about on this night. So anyway, like I said, it is a huge game next weekend against TCU. If Texas can manage to get a win there at home, sets them up as one of the favorites at that point to be in the Big 12 championship game. So that in and of itself is massive. So anyway, that is pretty much it. Like I said, in the next 2 days, we'll be coming back with the weekly show for recapping Kansas State a little bit more in depth, previewing TCU. We are also doing preview for Texas basketball because we are now just a couple days away. It starts November 7th. So that is pretty much it. See ya.